And joining me now is Nader Hashemi, professor of Middle East politics at Georgetown University. Professor, thank you for being here. With tensions high in the Middle East, what does Pezeshkian's win mean for Iran?
Well, it means that Iranian citizens will not have to live under an extreme ultra-conservative hardliner, his key rival, who is competing for him in the second round. But I think the big takeaway here is that no one should expect any substantive changes in domestic or Iranian foreign policy, because those decisions are not made at the level of the president. They're made at the level of the office of the supreme leader. A lot of domestic policy is shaped by the judiciary, which the president or parliament has no say over. And then, of course, you have the deep state, the IRGC-controlled sort of security services that effectively run the country. So, there's not going to be any dramatic change in domestic Iranian policy or international policy, at least not in the short term. But there might be some room for a lightening of some of the more draconian, restrictions that Iranians have been living under in recent years.
Now, Pezeshkian is known as a centrist and a reformist. What does this mean for foreign policy? Do you think there will be changes there?
Yeah, I think this is one of the most significant potential openings and breakthroughs that we can see. In the campaign, Pezeshkian, the president-elect, campaigned and promised to restart negotiations with the United States and the world to lift sanctions on Iran that have been imposed by the United States because of its nuclear policy. So that's something that he's committed to. Of course, it takes two to tango, so we have to see who wins the American presidential election. If it's Joe Biden and the Democrats, then I think there is going to be a new opening for diplomacy to move forward between the United States and Iran to try and resolve some of these issues. But having said that, I want to emphasize what I said a moment ago. The president of Iran does not have unilateral autonomy to make these types of big foreign policy decisions. These have to be approved by the office of the supreme leader, who is the all-powerful sort of figure in the Iranian political system that can veto any of these decisions. So, there's a potential opening, but of course, this is all dependent on what the supreme leader wants and what happens in the forthcoming American presidential election that could, determine whether there will be any new options for diplomacy between Iran and the outside world.
There were over 600,000 spoiled ballots in this election. What does that tell you about the level of support? Well, that's a good point. These elections were the lowest, had the lowest turnout in the history of the Islamic Republic. Those 600,000 plus ballots effectively were people who, don't have faith in the political system. They just voted because they wanted their identification card stamped so they wouldn't be sort of branded enemies of the states enemies of the Iranian state if they, had any sort of business to do in Iran with respect to getting a passport renewed or, getting their kid registered in school, et cetera. So that's actually, I think, one of the big takeaways here. The vast majority of Iranians did not participate in this vote, and those that did, over 600,000, as you correctly pointed out, cast blank ballots, effectively sending a message that they do not have faith in this political system. And so one of the key takeaways is that the crisis of legitimacy in the Islamic Republic continues to exist and increase. Whether this new president will be able to address that issue in the short term or long term remains to be seen. I'm skeptical because I think, the problems, as I said a moment ago in Iran, are not in the hands of the president. They're in the hands of these unelected officials that effectively run the system in Iran. So I don't think anyone should have any big expectations that just because we've had an election in Iran that things are going to change dramatically. That is our time. We will have to leave it there. Professor, thank you very much for being here with us. Nader Hashemi, professor of Middle East politics at Georgetown University.